Under the golden haze of the late afternoon sun, the gates of the sprawling Aduale estate glimmered like silent sentinels, guarding a world of unimaginable wealth. They were made of ornate, wrought iron and stood taller than two men, etched with a family crest that had signified power for generations. But on this particular day, the man standing at those gates looked nothing like a billionaire. His faded navy uniform, a relic from a past he had never truly lived, hung loosely over his lean 60-year-old frame, a stark contrast to the perfectly tailored silk suits he usually wore. His cap sat low on his forehead, a deliberate shield, shading his eyes and adding an air of anonymity. The weathered hands gripping the cold iron bars were calloused, not from a lifetime of labor, but from the recent unaccustomed friction of a new, deliberate poverty. To anyone passing by, he was just another aging gatekeeper earning an honest day's wage. No one could have guessed that behind the deep lines etched into his dark, dignified face was a man who owned more land than the eye could see, commanded companies in half the world, and held a heart that had been both blessed and broken by the choices of life. This was Henry Aduale, and today, his mission was not about protecting the estate but about protecting his only son's future. For years, he had lived by the words of his late wife, a woman of simple grace and profound wisdom. "You see a person's soul," she had often said, her voice soft but firm, "in how they treat those who can give them nothing." It was a lesson he learned the hard way, a lesson that cost him a dear friend, a man who, like him, had built an empire, only to see it crumble when he trusted his heart to a woman who saw him only as a source of endless fortune. Henry had watched as the marriage soured, as the beautiful facade of love dissolved into bitterness and greed, leaving his friend a broken shell of a man who lost his will to live. The memory was a ghost that haunted him, a whisper that reminded him to always look beyond the surface. It was a debt of protection he owed to his own son, a promise he had made to his wife on her deathbed. Now, his son, David, was engaged to a stunning young woman named Naomi. Her beauty could light up a room, but Henry had not yet seen her heart. His fears, born from experience, led him to devise a plan, an old but revealing test. He would disappear from his usual world for a week, disguising himself as a poor gatekeeper, stationed right at the front of the estate. Naomi, his future daughter-in-law, would one day enter as his daughter-in-law. No one but his most trusted assistant knew of this plan. Henry hoped to see just a glimmer of kindness, a shred of humanity, an acknowledgement of his existence. What he feared was seeing nothing at all. He knew David was deeply in love, his son's face alight with a joy Henry hadn't seen in years. This made the gamble even more terrifying. The first day passed quietly, a slow burn of anticipation. Henry watched the world from his new, humble vantage point. The estate's sprawling grounds, a place he knew like the back of his hand, now seemed vast and distant. He felt like an outsider in his own home. Naomi arrived in a sleek black sedan, whose polished surface reflected the sunlight like a mirror. The gleam of a diamond bracelet, a gift from David, caught the sun as she stepped out, her perfume, a fragrant announcement of her importance, trailing behind her. Henry, in his weathered uniform, greeted her with a polite nod and a silent push of the gate. She didn't glance his way. Her phone, a device that seemed to command all her attention, was more important. She walked past him as if he were part of the scenery, a statue to be ignored. Day after day, the pattern became a slow, quiet torture. Henry opened the gates for her each morning and closed them each evening, rain or shine, a silent, dutiful servant. She would pass him without a word, a look, or even a flicker of recognition. Henry wasn't looking for grand gestures, just a shred of kindness. He was hoping for a moment where their eyes might meet, where she might offer a simple good morning or a fleeting smile. But he found nothing. She was an inhabitant of her own world, and in that world he simply did not exist. He watched her interact with the other staff, the gardeners, the maids, the groundskeepers. Her politeness to them was a thin veneer, a practiced artifice that dissolved into curt orders and impatient sighs as soon as she turned her back. He heard her complain loudly to David on the phone about the help, not understanding her. a chilling dismissal of the very people who kept their world running. The physical toll of his new role was a constant reminder of his purpose. The old iron bars were heavy, and the uniform, a rough, chafing fabric, rubbed against his skin. The afternoon sun beat down on him, and the evenings grew cold, chilling him to the bone. He felt the aches in his back and the stiffness in his joints, a poignant reminder of the lives he had toiled to make better. A life of comfort he was now willingly sacrificing to uncover the truth. He caught himself thinking, is this what I am to her? Just a fixture? A tool? The thought was a bitter pill. He wanted to be wrong. He desperately wanted to be wrong. Then came the moment that would etch itself into his memory. A moment that went beyond simple indifference and exposed a core of casual cruelty. Naomi had arrived earlier than usual, her red dress vivid against the ivory walls of the estate. She seemed irritated, muttering into her phone about an argument with a friend over a designer handbag. She threw her phone into her purse with a loud clatter and stomped toward the gates. Henry, noticing her mood, opened them, stepping slightly aside to give her space. Without warning, she stopped in front of him, a plastic bottle in her hand, the liquid inside dark and sticky. Her face held a smirk that didn't reach her eyes, a fleeting expression of malice. Without a word, she tipped the bottle over his head. The cold drink, a thick cola, soaked his cap, streamed down his face, and drenched his shirt. It clung to his skin, sticky and shameful, attracting a swarm of tiny flies that buzzed around his head. She laughed, a sharp, cold sound that echoed off the silent walls of the estate, a sound so cruel it felt like a dagger piercing his heart. "Oops," she said, her voice dripping with mock apology, before walking away as though nothing had happened. Henry stood frozen, a statue of humiliation. The uniform clung to his skin, and so did the shame. He felt the cool stickiness of the liquid, a tangible representation of her scorn. He thought back to his wife, to her words about seeing a person's soul. In that moment, a devastating truth settled over him like a shroud. He knew his son was standing on the edge of a future that could destroy him. But Henry wasn't quick to act. He wanted to be certain, to see if this cruelty was just a passing moment or the truth of her nature. Over the next few days, he observed her from the shadows of the estate's garden, a silent, unseen figure watching from the edges of his own world. She never apologized. She never offered him a kind word. Instead, she seemed to grow more dismissive, more entitled. She would drive past him with a deliberate, pointed ignorance, as if his presence was an insult to her. He watched her interact with David, a performance of affection that felt increasingly hollow to him. Her smiles, her laughter, all seemed calculated, a carefully constructed mask. Henry's heart grew heavier with each passing day, knowing the confrontation ahead would hurt his son deeply. He spent his nights in a small, unused servants' quarters, the bed hard and the air stale. He thought about David, his kind-hearted son who saw the best in everyone, a trait Henry had always admired but now feared. He knew David would be devastated, his world shattered. But Henry also knew the pain of a short-term heartbreak was nothing compared to a lifetime of regret. He had to be strong for David, for his late wife, and for the integrity of his family name. When the day of truth finally came, Henry shed the faded uniform and stepped into a perfectly tailored, dark suit that had once been his second skin. The gatekeeper was gone. The billionaire had returned, his face a mask of calm, quiet power. He summoned Naomi and David to the grand hall of the estate, its marble floors gleaming under the light of chandeliers that had witnessed generations of family gatherings. David was confused, his face a mix of concern and bewilderment. He had been away on business, unaware of his father's test. Naomi's eyes widened when Henry walked in, no longer a hunched figure by the gates, but a man radiating the silent authority of someone who had built an empire from nothing. She took a step back, her perfectly composed demeanor cracking under the weight of his presence. She tried to smile, but it looked forced and unnatural. With a calm voice and eyes that missed nothing, Henry told the story of his week. He spoke of the uniform, the heavy gates, the silent mornings, and the indifferent faces that passed him by. He told them of the gatekeeper who had been invisible, unworthy of attention, until he became an object of ridicule. He didn't raise his voice, but each word was a hammer blow, deliberate and final. "You told my son you love him, and I hope you do," Henry began, his voice steady. "But love without respect is a castle built on sand, a hollow promise that crumbles at the first sign of a storm. And your disrespect, your cruelty, was a storm I witnessed firsthand." He recounted the moment with the sticky drink, the cold laughter, and her complete disregard for his dignity. He spoke of his wife's words, of how a person's true self is revealed in how they treat those who can give them nothing. As he spoke, Naomi's face shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to naked fear. David's hand, which had been resting in hers, slowly pulled away, his eyes fixed on his father's face, a dawning horror and understanding washing over him. The silence in the hall was so deep it felt like the walls themselves were listening, bearing witness to a family's truth. Naomi tried to explain, to excuse her behavior as a joke or a bad day, but the damage was done. The truth, stark and unyielding, stood between them. Henry didn't humiliate her further. He simply said, "The engagement is over. You may leave." The engagement ended that day, not with a storm of anger, but with the quiet, unshakable truth of a test failed. David was heartbroken. He had to mourn the future he thought he had, but in time, he came to see his father's actions not as an act of interference, but as an act of profound love. He began to understand that his father's wealth was built on a foundation of integrity, and that a person's character was more valuable than any fortune. It was a difficult journey, filled with tears and painful conversations, but it was also a journey of growth and self-discovery. Months later, he met someone whose kindness shone even brighter than her smile, a woman named Laura. One evening, as they were leaving the estate after a dinner with Henry, she saw the new gatekeeper, a kind old man named Thomas. She stopped, shook his hand, and thanked him for his work, asking how his day had been. She even brought him a thermos of hot tea to keep him warm. Henry, watching from the shadows, felt the heavy weight in his chest lift at last. David had found a woman who saw people for who they were, not what they had. Henry watched them together one evening, the sound of their laughter echoing through the garden. He knew that this love was built on a foundation that would never crumble. His story was not just about wealth or deception. It was about the values that stand the test of time: kindness, respect, humility, and the courage to protect those we love from harm, even when it hurts. In a world where appearances can be deceiving, it is easy to judge someone by the clothes they wear, the car they drive, or the title they hold. But as Henry's disguise proved, none of those things can hide or enhance the true nature of a person's heart. A kind soul will shine no matter the circumstances, and an unkind one will eventually reveal itself, even under the brightest disguise. Many of us might never have to pretend to be someone else to uncover the truth. But we all face moments when we must decide who we will be to others. Will we be the person who looks away from someone struggling? Or will we be the one who offers a hand? Will we judge based on what we see? Or will we take the time to understand what lies within? If Henry Aduale's journey taught us anything, it is that love without kindness is hollow, and respect is the true foundation of any relationship worth keeping. Let this story be a reminder that the smallest actions, a smile, a thank you, a moment of patience, can mean more than any grand display of wealth. If this message touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Nanya so that more people can witness the power of seeing beyond wealth and appearances. And before you go, I have a special request. Please comment below with your thoughts on this story. Do you think Henry did the right thing? Have you ever seen someone's true character revealed in an unexpected moment? Your words matter more than you know.